Jake, please forgive me. You made your choice. Now live with it. You know that moment when your whole world tilts sideways? When everything you thought was solid suddenly feels like it's built on quicksand? Yeah, that was me. Sitting in Rosewood Restaurant, watching my wife, Amanda, tell me she wanted a divorce while she critiqued the wine selection like some kind of sommelier. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days when Amanda dropped the bomb. We were at her favorite upscale restaurant in Manhattan, the place where she schmoozes potential real estate clients and always keeps her preferred corner table available. The kind of place where they know your name because you drop serious money, not because you're actually worth knowing. I wasn't eating. My plate sat untouched in front of me, the $40 steak growing cold while I watched her. Really watched her, maybe for the first time in months. The way she laughed too loudly at something her colleague Brad said over the phone. The way she didn't even glance at me when she finally hung up. The way her diamond bracelet caught the candlelight. Jewelry I'd given her for our 4th anniversary, back when I still believed we were building something together that would last. Funny how money changes everything, isn't it? How a firefighter's salary suddenly seems quaint when you're rubbing elbows with people who flip million-dollar properties for fun. "You're not eating," she said, finally noticing me. Her voice had that edge to it, the one that always appeared when I wasn't performing my role correctly, when I wasn't being the perfect working-class accessory she needed for her authentic New York client dinners. "Are you trying to make some kind of statement, Jake?" I wasn't. I was just tired, bone-deep, soul-crushing tired. You ever feel like you're slowly disappearing? Like every day, a little more of who you used to be just evaporates. That was my life with Amanda Morrison. Tired of being the firefighter husband she paraded around at real estate galas while whispering to her wealthy clients that I was noble enough considering. Tired of living in her upgraded downtown loft, sleeping in her king-size bed, wearing the one decent suit she'd bought me because my dress blues apparently weren't appropriate for civilian networking events. Have you ever been reminded in 1,000 subtle and not-so-subtle ways that you're a guest in someone else's world? Not a partner, never an equal, just there. Like expensive furniture that serves a purpose but doesn't really belong. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "Just not hungry." She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them like a teenager annoyed with a parent, and went back to her salmon. The waiter appeared, some kid probably working his way through college, asking if everything was satisfactory. Amanda launched into this detailed critique of the wine selection, using words that meant absolutely nothing except that she enjoyed making service. Workers scrambled to please her. That's when I knew. Sitting there in that overpriced restaurant, watching my wife of 6 years treat a stranger with more respect than she'd given me in months, I knew our marriage was over. Had been over probably longer than I wanted to admit. The question wasn't whether we'd end. It was when and how much of myself I'd lose in the process. Turns out, I didn't have to wait long for the answer. We didn't speak during the car ride home. Amanda scrolled through Instagram, double-tapping photos of luxury properties and celebrity homes. People from her world, the world of million-dollar listings and Hampton summer rentals, of private schools and country clubs where memberships cost more than most firefighters earned in a year. I'd never quite fit into that world, and she'd never let me forget it, despite 6 years of trying. 6 years of slowly erasing myself to become whoever she needed me to be. My father used to tell me that real love didn't care about bank accounts. He'd say it while we sat in our small apartment in Queens, him working double shifts at the firehouse while I studied for the academy entrance exams. He'd say it while we ate takeout for the 4th night in a row because that's what we could afford. He'd say it with such conviction that I believed him completely. Maybe he was wrong, or maybe he was right, and what Amanda and I had was never love at all. Maybe it was just convenience, just proximity, just two people who looked good together in her carefully curated Instagram posts. The loft was dark when we arrived. 23rd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Manhattan. The kind of view that makes tourists press their faces against glass barriers and dream of being important enough to afford it someday. I used to stand at those windows and feel like I'd made it, like the kid from Queens had somehow cracked the code, married the successful woman, entered her elevated world. Now, I just felt like an imposter waiting to be found out, waiting for someone to realize I didn't belong in her carefully orchestrated life. "We need to talk," Amanda said, kicking off her designer heels and walking to the bar. She poured herself a scotch, Macallan 18, because of course, without offering me one. Not that I wanted it. I'd learned that her expensive tastes weren't really about quality. They were about the label, about what other people would think when they saw the bottle. This isn't working. You know it isn't working. I did know, but hearing her say it out loud made something crack open in my chest. Something I'd been keeping carefully sealed for months, maybe years. That last shred of hope that maybe we could find our way back to whatever we'd been before the money started mattering more than everything else. "What do you want, Amanda?" She turned then, and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, just a cold clinical assessment, like she was evaluating a property that wasn't moving in the market, deciding whether to cut the listing price or find a new strategy altogether. A divorce, a clean one, quick, no drama. The word hung in the air between us like smoke from a 4-alarm fire. Divorce. The end of everything we'd built, or everything I'd thought we were building, while she'd apparently been planning her exit strategy with the precision of a military campaign. "Okay," I said, because what else was there to say? Her eyebrows lifted slightly. She'd expected a fight, maybe tears, begging, the whole dramatic scene where the desperate husband pleads for another chance. But I'd learned something in 6 years of marriage to Amanda Morrison. She always got what she wanted. Fighting only prolonged the inevitable and gave her ammunition to use against you later. "Okay," she repeated. "That's it? You know what's funny about rich people? They think everything should be a negotiation. Like life is just another real estate deal where you start high and work your way down to something mutually beneficial. But some things aren't for sale, and some decisions don't need a counteroffer." "What do you want me to say? That I'll fight for a marriage you clearly checked out a month ago? That I'll make this difficult?" I shrugged. "I won't. If you want a divorce, we'll get a divorce." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment that I wasn't giving her the scene she'd rehearsed for. Then it was gone, replaced by that same cool efficiency I'd learned to recognize as her default setting when dealing with inconvenient emotions. "Good. My lawyer will send over the papers tomorrow. You can have someone look them over." She paused, and her smile wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who'd already won and was just enjoying the victory lap. "Oh, wait, you can't afford a decent lawyer, can you? Well, I'm sure there are plenty of adequate attorneys who work for less." There it was. The knife slipped between the ribs so smoothly I almost didn't feel it at first. The reminder of exactly where I stood in her hierarchy of importance. Below her yoga instructor. Below her personal shopper. Probably below the guy who detailed her BMW. "I'll find someone," I managed. She took a sip of her scotch, studying me over the rim of the glass like I was something interesting she'd found under a microscope. "You should probably start packing. I'd like you out by the end of the week. The loft is in my name, obviously. As is, well, everything really." My throat tightened. Everything. Have you ever realized that your entire life could fit in someone else's filing cabinet? That 6 years of what you thought was building a partnership was really just you being a very expensive pet? Did you contribute to the down payment, Jake? The mortgage, the renovations? Do you pay the maintenance fees? Each question was delivered with surgical precision, designed to cut deep. No, no, and hell no. So, yes, everything belonged to her. Everything except the clothes on my back and whatever dignity I could salvage from this train wreck. I'd known this, of course. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I'd always known that nothing in this life was actually mine. But knowing it theoretically and having it laid out in such stark, brutal terms were completely different things. It's like knowing a building is on fire versus actually feeling the heat on your face. "I have some savings," I started. "Do you?" Her smile widened, and I felt my stomach drop like an elevator with cut cables. "That joint account we opened when we got married, I closed it this afternoon, transferred everything to my personal account. My lawyer says it's perfectly legal. It was my money funding it anyway." Of course it was. Because what kind of successful real estate agent would let her firefighter husband actually contribute to their finances? That would be like letting the help make decisions about the wine cellar. "You're welcome to whatever's in your old checking account from before we met. I'm sure those..." She paused, pretending to calculate with the kind of theatrical consideration you'd use to decide between appetizers. "$600 will take you far." The room tilted slightly. $600. That's what 6 years of marriage had left me with. $600 in a closet full of clothes I'd never wanted, paid for with money that was never mine, to attend parties where I never belonged. You want to know what real poverty is? It's not having no money. It's realizing that everything you thought was yours was just borrowed, and now someone's calling in the loan with interest. Amanda. Oh, and Jake. She set down her glass and walked toward the bedroom, pausing in the doorway like she was delivering the punchline to a joke I hadn't realized she was telling. I'd appreciate it if you were gone by Monday morning. I have someone coming over for brunch, and it would be awkward if you were still here. Someone, not even a name, just someone. Someone who was probably already sleeping in our bed on the nights I worked 24-hour shifts. Someone she'd been planning this escape with, while I'd been naive enough to think we were just going through a rough patch like every other married couple. The bedroom door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gavel falling. I stood there in the living room for a long time, staring at those windows I'd once loved, at the city spread out below like a glittering promise that I'd apparently never been qualified to collect on. From up here, New York looked beautiful, magical, like anything was possible. From where I was standing, it just looked cold and indifferent, like a beautiful woman who'd never notice you existed. Have you ever felt completely erased? Like you could disappear right now, and the only thing that would change is someone might wonder why the rent on that studio apartment in Queens stopped. Getting paid? I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Instead, I pulled out my old duffel bag, the one from the academy, worn and patched, shoved in the back of the closet behind garment bags of suits I'd never paid for, and started packing what was left of my life. It was amazing how little was actually mine. The clothes, hers, the watch, a gift from her parents that I'd somehow convinced myself was a gesture of acceptance rather than obligation. The laptop, purchased with her credit card because we share everything, honey. Right? We shared everything the same way a landlord shares property with a tenant. I found myself sorting through 6 years of my life and realizing I could fit what was truly mine into a single bag. Some old books with cracked spines that Amanda had always wanted to throw away because they looked shabby. A few photos of my father in his dress blues. The FDNY hoodie I'd worn so much during the academy that the letters were cracking, which she'd tried to replace 3 times with something more appropriate for public wear. My phone, which I'd insisted on paying for myself, one of the few small rebellions I'd maintained, like keeping a tiny piece of who I used to be. And there, at the bottom of my drawer, buried under socks I'd never worn because they were too expensive to feel comfortable in, were my father's dog tags. I'd forgotten about them, honestly. Captain Roy Morrison, Engine Company 47. He'd given them to me the week before he died, pressed them into my hand while he lay in that hospital bed, the lung cancer having eaten away everything, except his determination to see me settled in the department, carrying on the family tradition. "Promise me you'll keep these," he'd whispered, his voice thin as paper, barely audible above the machines keeping him alive. "Don't lose them unless you absolutely have to, but keep them. Promise me, Jake." I'd promised, even though I didn't understand why. They were just old metal tags, worn smooth at the edges, the numbers barely visible from years of being carried in pockets and rubbed between worried fingers. Firefighters don't get rich, and a single father raising a kid in Queens, even less so. I'd assumed whatever sentimental value they held was purely emotional, but sitting there on the floor of a loft I was being evicted from, turning the tags over in my hands, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. Besides his badge number, there were other digits etched into the metal, numbers that didn't make sense in any context I could think of. You know that feeling when you realize you've been missing something obvious? Like when you finally notice the exit sign that's been there all along, but you've been so busy looking for the door that you never thought to look up? On impulse, I called my dad's old partner, Captain Murphy, who'd retired a few years back and spent his time now fishing off Long Island and complaining about how the department had gone soft. "Jake? Jesus, kid, it's late. You okay?" The concern in his voice almost broke me. Murphy had been checking on me since Dad died, one of those guys who took brotherhood seriously. He'd probably drop everything and drive into the city if I asked him to, no questions asked. That's the thing about firefighters. We might not have money, but we have something Amanda's world would never understand. "Murph, those numbers on my dad's tags, the ones after his badge number. Do you know what they mean? A long pause. I could hear him shifting around, probably sitting up in bed. Safety deposit box, First National, downtown. Your dad made me promise to tell you if you ever asked. Said you'd know when it was time. Safety deposit box? My father had never mentioned any safety deposit box. We'd gone through his effects when he died, settled his debts, closed his accounts. There had been nothing left except his pension and those dog tags. What could a firefighter who lived paycheck to paycheck possibly have needed to keep in a bank vault? But then again, what did I really know about my father? I mean, really know? You think you know someone because you lived in the same apartment for 18 years, because you shared takeout dinners and watched games together. But people have layers, don't they? Secrets they carry because they think they're protecting you from something, or maybe because they're protecting themselves. Jake, you still there? Yeah, Murph, thanks. I'll check it out. Kid, whatever's going on with you and that wife of yours, just remember. Your dad always said you were better than you knew. Don't let anyone make you forget that. The line went dead, and I sat there holding the dog tags, feeling their weight differently now. Not just the weight of metal and memory, but the weight of possibility, of questions that maybe finally had answers waiting. The next morning came gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that makes you want to stay in bed and pretend the world doesn't exist. But I had nowhere to stay in bed, and the world had made it pretty clear that pretending wasn't an option anymore. I stood outside First National Bank in Lower Manhattan, the dog tags heavy in my pocket like a secret I was finally ready to tell. The branch was nearly empty, just a few early customers at the ATMs and a banker sitting at one of the desks, scrolling through her phone with the look of someone bored beyond measure on a Saturday morning. Saturdays used to mean something different. Pancakes with Amanda, reading the real estate section of the Times while she circled properties she wanted to show clients, pretending I cared about market trends and square footage. Now Saturday just meant another day closer to having nowhere to go. I approached the desk hesitantly, feeling like I was about to confess to a crime I wasn't sure I'd committed. Excuse me, I think my father had a safety deposit box here. He passed away 6 years ago, and I just found out about it. The banker looked up, professional smile automatically activating like a motion sensor light. Young, probably fresh out of college, the kind of eager efficiency that comes from still believing the system works exactly the way they taught you it would. Of course, sir. I'll need some identification and the box number. I handed over my license and the dog tags, pointing to the numbers Murphy had mentioned. She glanced at them casually, started to input the information into her computer with that same bored expression, and then her face changed. It was subtle at first, just a slight widening of the eyes, a pause in her movements like someone trying to process information that doesn't compute. But then she looked at the screen, looked at the tags, looked at me, and the blood literally drained from her face. All the color just went out of it like someone had pulled a plug. Have you ever watched someone's entire worldview shift in real time? It's like watching a controlled demolition, where everything looks solid 1 second and then suddenly there's just dust and rebar where a building used to be. Sir, she said, her voice suddenly very different, very careful, like she was talking to someone who might explode if she used the wrong tone. Can you wait here for just 1 moment? Is something wrong? No, not wrong. Just please wait here. She stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward and hit the wall with a bang that made other customers look over. Then she was walking, almost running, to the back offices, the dog tag still clutched in her hand, like evidence of something impossible. I watched her go, confused, a sick feeling building in my stomach. Had my father done something illegal? Was this some kind of fraud investigation waiting to happen? Was I about to be arrested for trying to access a dead man's safety deposit box based on numbers etched in dog tags? You know what they say about firefighters. We run toward danger when everyone else is running away. But sitting there in that bank, watching other employees start to whisper and glance in my direction, I wanted nothing more than to run, to grab those tags and walk out and pretend I'd never heard of safety deposit boxes or First National Bank. Minutes passed, long, uncomfortable minutes that stretched like hours. Other bankers started glancing my way, having hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I looked in their direction. A woman in an expensive suit came out of the back office, looked at me with the kind of assessment usually reserved for crime scenes, and said something sharp to my banker that I couldn't hear. And then they were both walking toward me, and the first woman's face was still pale, and the suited woman was carrying a folder thick enough to choke a horse. "Mr. Morrison," the manager said, and her voice was gentle in the way people's voices get when they're about to change your life completely. The way the chaplain's voice had sounded when he came to tell me about my father. "I'm Patricia Wells, the branch manager. Could you come with me, please, somewhere more private?" The sick feeling intensified. "What's going on?" "Sir," the first banker said, and her voice was shaking slightly. "Please, you need to see this." They led me to a private office in the back, closing the door behind us with the kind of deliberate care that suggested whatever was about to happen required absolute privacy. The manager sat down across from me, opened the folder, and pulled out a statement that looked like it had more zeros than a lottery ticket. "Mr. Morrison, I need to verify your identity first. Can I see your driver's license again?" I handed it over with hands that had started trembling, the same way they had the first time I'd gone into a burning building. She studied it, compared it to something on her computer screen, nodded slowly like she was confirming something she couldn't quite believe. "It's you. You're really you." "What are you talking about?" She slid the statement across the desk. I looked down at it, at the box number that matched my father's tags, at the name Captain Roy Morrison, primary account holder. Jake Morrison, sole beneficiary upon death. Transfer activated upon authorized access. And then I saw the balance. I stopped breathing. Had to be reading it wrong? Had to be. That many zeros didn't exist in my father's world. Couldn't exist. My father, who'd worked double shifts to keep us afloat, who'd worried about my college tuition, who died in a hospital bed wearing pajamas I'd bought at Walmart because it was all I could afford. I couldn't even finish the sentence. $87 million, the manager said softly, like she was afraid saying it too loud might make it disappear. Give or take a few $100,000. The account has been accruing interest for 6 years. Your father set it up as a trust that would transfer to you automatically upon his death, but only if you used the dog tags to access it. Until you did, it remained dormant, untouched. $87 million. The number kept bouncing around in my head like a pinball, hitting against everything I thought I knew about reality and making absolutely no sense at all. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. But Patricia Wells was shaking her head, pulling out more papers, more documents I couldn't focus on because the number kept swimming in my vision like heat waves rising off summer asphalt. "No mistake, Mr. Morrison, though I imagine you have questions about where this came from." She pulled out an envelope, sealed, my name written on it in my father's careful handwriting, the same handwriting that had signed permission slips and birthday cards and the occasional note in my lunchbox when I was a kid. "Your father left you this. He instructed that this be given to you when you access the account." Along with the letter, she slid across a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, a law firm with an address that suggested they didn't handle divorce cases in Queens. "They've been managing your father's estate. Well, your estate now. There are significant holdings beyond this account. Properties, investments, a trust that's been growing for decades. They'll need to speak with you immediately to begin the transfer process." She paused, studying my face like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "Mr. Morrison, I know this is shocking, but..." She leaned forward slightly. "Whoever you thought your father was, whoever you thought you were, everything just changed." I looked down at the envelope in my hands, at my father's handwriting, and thought about Amanda in her loft, probably already planning her new life with someone whose name she couldn't be bothered to mention to her soon-to-be ex-husband. Everything just changed. I sat in that office for 20 minutes before I could move, the envelope feeling impossibly heavy in my hands. Just paper, just ink, but weighted with 6 years of questions I hadn't known to ask. Around me, the bank hummed with its usual Saturday rhythm, but in this small room, with its generic corporate art, my entire reality was fragmenting like a mirror struck dead center. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter inside was written on the same cheap notepad paper Dad had always used, the kind you buy in bulk from the dollar store. Even now, even revealing whatever he was about to reveal, he'd stayed true to character. "My dear son, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. It means you finally used the dog tags I gave you, which means you've hit rock bottom, or close enough that you remembered your old man's last gift. I'm sorry it had to be this way. I'm sorry for so many things." He explained that he'd lied to me my entire life. Not about loving me, never about that, but about everything else. About who he was, about where the money came from, about why we lived the way we lived when we never had to. Your grandfather wasn't just a firefighter, Jake. Captain Sean Morrison was also a very smart investor. He took every penny he made from 1945 to 1980 and put it into a little company called IBM, then later into something called Microsoft, then Google, then Apple. He never touched the principal, just lived off his FDNY salary and let the investments grow. When he died, he left it all to me. And I did the same thing, lived off my salary, let the money grow, added to it when I could. I wanted you to need it, son. I wanted you to live a real life first, to struggle and fail and succeed on your own merit, to know what it feels like to earn something, to build something, to be someone without money making every door fly open before you even knocked. You know what hits you hardest when you find out your whole life has been a carefully constructed lie? It's not the anger, though that comes later. It's the vertigo. The feeling that gravity just stopped working and you're floating in space, trying to figure out which way is up. Because now, when you have everything, you'll know what nothing feels like. And that knowledge, that memory of struggle, that's worth more than any amount of money I could have given you. He apologized for the deception, for all the nights we ate fast food when he could have bought the entire building we lived in. But he wasn't sorry for raising me the way he did. Those lessons would serve me better than any trust fund ever could. The letter ended with something that made me cry right there in that banker's office. I saw the woman you married. She's beautiful, successful, everything the world tells us we should want. But she doesn't love you the way you deserve to be loved, son. I could tell. Could see it in your eyes when you talked about her. If I'm right, if she's hurt you the way I suspect she will, don't let her take anything that matters. Not your dignity, not your kindness, not your belief that real love exists. It does exist, Jake. It's just rare, and it never, ever uses money as a weapon. Dad had known, had seen through Amanda from across the city, from a hospital bed, with nothing but my tone of voice to guide him. The lawyers explained everything over the phone, real estate holdings across 3 states, stock portfolios managed by firms I'd never heard of, board positions at companies that wanted the Morrison name attached to their fire safety initiatives. I wasn't just rich. I was wealthy enough to make Amanda's entire social circle look like they were playing with Monopoly money. But here's the thing about having real power. You don't need to wave it around like a flag. You can be surgical about it, precise. I kept working, kept living in the studio apartment I'd rented after the divorce, kept my mouth shut and my plans quiet while I had my lawyers quietly purchase the building Amanda's real estate agency occupied. Not the agency itself. That would be too obvious. Just the building, her landlord. 3 weeks later, Amanda got a call from her office manager. The building had been sold to a private investment firm. New ownership was implementing immediate changes, upgraded security systems, renovated lobby, updated technology throughout. But here's the interesting part. The new owner had specifically requested that Amanda Morrison's office be moved to the premium corner suite with the harbor view. No explanation given. Amanda called me that evening for the first time since I'd moved out. Jake, it's me. I know. Listen, something strange is happening at work. Her voice had that edge it got when things weren't making sense in her carefully organized world. Our building got bought by some investment company, and they're doing all these improvements, but nobody knows who's behind it. The manager says the new owner specifically wanted me to have the best office space. She doesn't understand why. I smiled, looking out the window of the penthouse I'd quietly purchased, bought through shell companies the lawyers had set up, registered under names that would take a forensic accountant to trace back to me. That's nice for you. Jake, a long pause. The divorce papers. You signed them without asking for anything. Why? Because I didn't need anything from you, Amanda. I never did. What's that supposed to mean? You know what's beautiful about justice? It's not the dramatic confrontation or the explosive reveal. It's the slow realization, the creeping awareness that the world isn't quite what you thought it was. That maybe, just maybe, you made a terrible miscalculation. It means I hope you're happy with Brad. I hope you got everything you wanted. We're engaged, she said quietly, next month. Congratulations. Jake, who bought my building? I looked down at the dog tags on my desk, at the photo of my father in his dress blues that I'd had professionally framed, and thought about everything he'd sacrificed to teach me what really mattered. Someone who understands the value of good people, I said, and hung up. The truth would find her eventually. She'd piece it together, the upgrades, the mysterious owner, the timing, and when she did, she'd realize that the broke firefighter she'd thrown away had become the most powerful person in her world, someone who could buy and sell her entire life without breaking a sweat. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I had a city to protect, a legacy to honor, and a life to build that would make my father proud. That was the real inheritance, not the money. The choice to be decent with what I'd been given. And somewhere in Manhattan, Amanda was planning her wedding, never knowing that chaos had already started,